Think about all the interactions that Daniel had with the kings. He spoke well of everyone, yet without flattering them. He told the truth. He didn't lie to Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't lie to Belshazzar. And he didn't lie to Darius. This is the guy that you not only want to hire, but you want to put in charge. And all the kings except Belshazzar, who did it just a little too late. In 6:4, it says, Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way that Daniel was handling government affairs. But they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful. He was always responsible and completely trustworthy. It is likely that these people wanted to use their position in office to enrich themselves, and they didn't appreciate Daniel. Maybe they wanted to steer government contracts to family members or friends or get some money in exchange for favors. And it seems like so many people in politics don't change in the whole history of the world. In all this, they were upset at Daniel and wanted to find a way to get rid of him. They sent people to dig up dirt on him, maybe to try to find some stories that would cast Daniel in an unfavorable light. Something illegal that he did in his life. Maybe a bribe he took. But they found nothing. No one had any dirt on Daniel. No one wanted to betray him. His accusers now had a problem. How could they get rid of Daniel? In verse 5 it says, Then these men said, We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. How awesome would it be if that was the conclusion that people would come to if they tried to dig up dirt in our lives after we came to Christ? Yes, there is our old life before we gave our lives to Jesus. But what about now? Are we living a life transformed, washed free from our sins? And if there was a recording of all that we've done, would it show our character to be blameless? I know there was a time in my life, though I was a professing Christian, I would have been massively embarrassed by what you would see if you pulled back the curtain or you could open up my mind and see what was going on in it. Daniel didn't live like that. He lived his life in complete obedience to the Lord, the God of Israel, and because of this he was hated. There was no dirt they could dig up, and this likely contributed to his nerves of steel. He was honest. He was courageous. And the only place they could think of getting Daniel to fall was in connection with his God. They knew that he never wavered in his faithfulness to pray, and he made it a point to keep a schedule of prayer, one of which everyone knew. So all these men got together and came up with an idea. They decided to stroke the ego of King Darius. Continuing on in verse 6, it says, So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement. We administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, basically everyone, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue this law and sign it so that it cannot be changed. An official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. It was a ridiculous law. It was a horrific sentence. It was meant to scare anyone. And all that anyone would need to do to avoid being chomped on by some hungry lions would be to violate their conscience and betray their God. One would wonder if any thoughts went through Daniel's mind. Maybe he could just go hide and pray. But Daniel was not one to back down from a fight. Starting with the beginning of the book, where Daniel would not violate his conscience, even when it came to his diet. He would rather eat vegetables than betray the guidelines that God gave him. And I know I'd have a hard time with just eating vegetables and not eating meat. He was faithful in the small things, which gave him the will to stand strong in the hard things. And you could jot this in your notes. Faithfulness in small things is practice for the hard times that will come. In verse 10, continuing on. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and he knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. The Bible goes on to say that all the men went down to his house to see if they could catch him. Over 100 men sitting outside his window. And sure enough, there he was, praying at his window for all to see. And I wonder if he was praying just a bit louder this time, maybe in defiance of that law, so they would know that he was praying to God. Certainly a man with nerves of steel would do this, and this was the man Daniel was. He was a man who stood firm in his faith, who loved and completely trusted in God. So all of them went back to the king and told on Daniel. And Darius knew that he had made a mistake that would cost him his most trusted advisor and leader, a mistake that would take the only honest man that he knew away from him. Think about having a truly honest and truly humble politician. I know it sounds crazy because we kind of expect our leaders to lie to us, especially at the level that Daniel was at. A man who Darius wanted to appoint to rule the whole kingdom. And we could kind of think of him as being a prime minister like they have over in Great Britain, where the king is in charge, but the prime minister runs the country with the House of Lords or whatever to help him. And another thing about this law that was passed is that it was irrevocable. And this is a point that is mentioned 3 times in chapter 6. And it prevented the king from holding special favor to anyone. Darius tried and tried. It says that he tried all day to get this death sentence overturned. But nothing could be done. The men knew that this would happen and that they had Darius in a trap. They would finally get rid of Daniel and could get on with their corrupted life. Continuing in verse 16. It says, so at last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seal of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace, and he spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. The king was genuinely concerned for him. And it seems that they had a relationship similar to the one that Daniel had with King Nebuchadnezzar. And he hoped that the God of Daniel would deliver him from death. That night, Darius didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't even watch TV. No watching the ball game that night. No trying to numb his mind to what would happen to his trusted friend and his best administrator. And another thing worth thinking about is that Daniel was not a young man anymore. I know we've all colored pictures if you've drawn up. I mentioned that before, or grown up in church, I've mentioned that before. But Daniel may have been in his 80s when this happened. Some people say that he was 81 years old. And I also wonder if the king was praying for Daniel in all of this. Certainly he was hoping that God would rescue him. His friend, his trusted confidant, was sealed in the tomb after all, with a bunch of hungry lions. Verse 19, it says, very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. And when he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel answered, long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you either, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den, and not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. And you can put this in your notes. A life lived in prayer and obedience will help you live a bold life and stand when times are difficult. I believe that Daniel knew that God would protect his life that night. I don't think he was afraid when he went in there. After all, his friends survived the fiery furnace with God right there in the midst with them. Daniel knew he was innocent. This was a ridiculous law, only meant to get him in trouble by a bunch of people who hated him. And Daniel's relationship to God was one of a close friend, and he knew that he could trust him.